Let me also quickly, get a thought from Wing Commander Sudhakaran as well. He was speaking right before that press conference started. Wing Commander Sudhakaran, please go ahead.
Yeah, I was referring to the insensitivity in the past when more than 15,000 people were killed and the culprit was escorted by the government, out of the country. So at least that level of insensitivity has not been shown. Ministers have had sleepless nights. Prime Minister has been on the ball, inquiring about it from morning to evening, monitoring their welfare, by the minute. So kudos for that. I salute that particular spirit, and that is what is changed India. But having said that, I fully echo what Group Captain Jha has said, and I've been telling it time and again, we are still a bunch of casual people. We come together only at a time of crisis. Can we keep our casual attitude by the side if we are really aspiring to be the Vishwadguru that we want so badly to be? We cannot afford to do this. We cannot have substandard quality in our construction. We cannot have substandard thoughts in our strategic consulting. We cannot have any level of substandard delivery in our professionalism. The army has not failed you, my countrymen. So, don't always count on that element which has failed. You're putting too much of stress on that element. Do your job. And when, for the students who are going into the academia, try to, get it into you, inculcate habit of cleanliness, professionalism, and honesty and integrity. That would serve this country, very well for the times to come. And God forbid we enter into a situation like this. Yes, we are good crisis managers, but let's not keep managing crisis. Let's, for a change, dictate terms at our own, terms and conditions. That can only happen if we are professional. That's all I have to say. I'm really happy that, these guys have come out in a healthy condition.
All right. Let me also once again welcome Major General Shashi Asthana, defense expert, Mr. Sandeep Chachra, human rights defender, with us on the show as well. Dr. Nilesh Gupta, psychiatrist, is joining us on the show. Sangeeta Behel, mountaineer, also with us on the program. All right, General Asthana, I'll come to you, sir. I hope you can hear me this time. All right, there seems to be a problem with this connection. Dr. Gupta, if you're there with us. Dr. Gupta? General Asthana, I see your finger go up, but I can't hear you, sir. Perhaps you're muted.
You muted. I can't unmute myself. Yeah.
All right. General Mathur, sir, go ahead. Sir, go ahead.
So the issue was, I was actually wondering as to whether this question is to me or not. What I was saying earlier, it is exactly the same thing which Group Captain Jha has said. We cannot afford to, keep waiting for yet another disaster to strike passively. There is a need to do a great active, proactive approach, unless we prepare ourselves. You know what kind of risks are involved in this kind of an operation. And it's not a new thing that we are doing. We have made so many of these tunnels over a period of last 8 to 10 or 15 years. So the issue is, there is a need for you to be prepared. There is a need for you to ensure quality. There cannot be a compromise on quality where you want to save an X amount of money. And what I'm trying to come at is absolutely clear. As an L1 business, you have to have a proper system which ensures quality, which ensures having considered every single contingency that might occur during such kind of a difficult operation, and then be prepared for that before you put your lives, human lives, into this kind of a thing. But having said that, congratulations to the entire team. Congratulations to the families of the people who've been rescued. But we need to do a lot and lots of introspection and lots of disaster learning skills out of it. We cannot keep waiting passively for yet another disaster to strike to teach us yet another lesson. We need to get everything out. Your NDRF battalions, your SDRFs, all these apparatus has to be fully equipped, trained, and expert in handling a situation like this,
Right, you're absolutely right, sir. But we have handled the situation quite well, Mr. Chatra.
Yes,
thank
we
you.
have.
Yeah, let me take a response from Mr. Chatra on this as well. Mr. Chatra, we have handled the situation quite well.
Yes.
The fact of the matter is that there haven't been a loss of life. There's been delay, but obviously, this is a meticulous process. This is a very sensitive operation. The time spent cannot be blamed for as incompetence. But the fact of the matter is that if something like this happens again, which it will, it's as sure as death and taxes. We need to be better prepared.
Thank you. First of all, I share the joy of all the families of workers who were trapped. And a salute to all the brave workers who were inside. And I know that trauma will be handled. So first thing off, I also salute and applaud the agencies working together, all of them. NDRF was named, the Army was named, other agencies which were on site, digging alternate tunnels, trying out everything with caution. So that has to be applauded unambiguously. But also, I salute the efforts of the workers, informal workers themselves, what are called rat miners. Those are mine workers which are banned, but they use their extremely, skilled hands to get to the last stretch and risking their lives. So it has to be sort of applauded. And I think all these efforts of rescue, you have said it, Vinitji, it takes time, but I think it has been well done and systematically done under a lot of media and so on and so forth. So very well done. I think there are two lessons. I think the Himalayas are sending very loud messages to all of us. We are trying to tame Himalayas, the Indian Himalayan region, and three big messages have happened this year. The sinking of Joshimath, and then you saw the glacial outburst in Sikkim. But let's not forget what happened in Himachal a few months ago with the landslides and the kind of flash floods going around. So I think there's a very loud message. In the case of Char Dham projects that we are talking about, the Silkaria tunnel here, you see the point in this whole thing is it's a 900-kilometer project. And I have, we know it's in a critical ecology. Himalayas are very critical. They are young, they are rising. They are among the fragile ecosystems which we need to protect. So what has happened is, I think the environmental impact assessment side of the story has been bypassed. And these 900-kilometer stretch has been considered into a series of what I read, 53 distinct projects, and therefore it enabled those bylaws. So on paper, in theory, on drawing boards, Char Dham is a good idea. But when it comes to putting it on the ground at 45-degree slopes in this precarious ecology, what it really leads to is deforestation. What it really leads to is this whole collapses and landslides that we see. So it is creating a lot of issues. And I think the lesson going ahead, and a loud lesson which is unaddressed for a long time, and I hope it's addressed emphatically now, is the lesson of planning with nature. Is the lesson of actually making a public conversation, but also regulations around the whole issue of what is the carrying capacity of the Indian Himalayan region. It's not just about numbers of people and population sizes, but the kind of infrastructure it can sustain, the kind of quote-unquote developed model that it can actually bear with. And I think that's the problem here. So I think there's a larger, deeper question going ahead, which thankfully in this case hasn't led to fatalities, and I really feel very good about it. But this is a conversation that we need to go on. The second important conversation, and briefly, Viniji, in light of time, is this whole question of workers' safety. See, largely, if you look at it, who's doing these tunnel constructions, the road constructions? These are migrant informal workers, whether from Bihar, whether from Jharkhand, whether from Eastern UP and other states. And not only they have very paltry social security systems, which most of informal workers have, and it's not only related to tunneling and road construction across sectors. They have very paltry social security system, and I think we need to sort of look at that. But also, when companies and private companies are involved within, there's an accountability there, they cut corners to cut safety standards, and these lead to fatalities. And I think these are the issues we need to sort of be regulating very, very strictly. Because you can, NHI and others can give it to private contractors, but what happens down the chain is for all of us to see, not just now, but across time. But also, Viniji, there are good models. Please remember, not so long ago was built the Atal Tunnel. in the Kullu region and the Lahore Spiti region. The company involved there ensured that those norms, first of all, those norms are not very well established, but at least they ensured those protocols are there, the exit routes when you are doing tunneling in such precarious situations. First of all, you need to see what the carrying capacity is, but secondly, you need to ensure exit paths. So did we have exit paths here? The workers got trapped. Did we have escape routes available? And I think that's where regulation, very strict regulation, very strict coordination between the construction companies, very strict oversight by the state agencies involved is needed. Else we will have more and more of this. The end of the day, in the Himalayan region, we do need, you see the vision of development itself, what it can do, what kind of grey infrastructure can be created, I mean concretes and roadways and buildings, how can it sustain? This whole issue needs much more imaginative attention. In view of climate change, and we've been seeing this, this has magnified tremendously. So I think we need to be very, very sensitive. And Himalayas are not the only critical ecology in our country. I mean, take rainforest areas, for instance, or take mangroves, for instance. So I think we need to have a much broader ecological conversation, much broader workers' protection, safety, social security kind of conversation in all of these sort of arenas. Those are the lessons and conversation I would like to make going ahead, while celebrating the efforts of all of the rescue agencies, which is a task really well done.
Absolutely.
I'm so happy to see 41 people going to be come out alive. At some stage, we were all losing hope. So
Absolutely.
It's wonderful today. Thank you, Vinitji.
Absolutely right. Some stellar points made by Mr. Chatra. General Asthana, I hope you can hear me, sir.
Yeah.
So moments away, probably, from having these 41 people, go through the toughest ordeal of their life, and no one person or agency can take credit for the kind of miracle or miraculous performance that is going to be pulled off here. What has been your observation so far? It's been 17 days. It happened on Diwali, and the whole nation has been concerned. Everybody has been waiting with bated breath for these men to come out, and they're brave hearts. We haven't heard any complaints. They've been, braving it out. They've been eating what's been given. They've been drinking what's been given, and they've been communicating. They've still been trying to keep a healthy mindset about being trapped in this tunnel for so long. But the fact of the matter is, there is supposed to be a post-mortem. There is going to be a biopsy of what went wrong. But today, let's focus just on what went right.
Certainly, we stand with all the workers and their families in this moment of joy, and I think your question itself, I think, is the most important factor, and that is the resilience of the workers themselves. It comes later. Firstly, had they given up, had they panicked, the whole operation would have been very difficult. That's one part of it. And so therefore, my salute to all the workers for actually bearing this kind of mental pressure, mental and physical pressure on themselves, and not complaining about it and not making the job of the rescue teams difficult. Then, of course, we need to compliment all the professionals of every field who have done this job. And this was a complicated operation, and a very complicated operation in a manner because the location was such that no heavy equipment and high-tech equipment could come there so easily. Even the long drills, the road corners were such that the drills couldn't take a turn there, and therefore the vehicles couldn't reach there. So these were kind of problems. Although if it was in some other place, obviously those drills would have been airlifted at any point of time, but that was not to be at that place. And thirdly, I must also say that as far as the technology is concerned, at the end of the day, the innovativeness and the skilling of the people on ground, that also mattered, but that was the icing in the cake, because when everything failed and when there was a situation of concern, that time I think these workers who finally made the last 10 meters possible, that was, I think, very important. Now there are certain bigger issues on this. Climate change, Mr. Chachra has already covered, so I won't speak about it. I totally agree with him, exactly whatever he has said. There is no doubt about it. As far as the other issues are concerned, we need to, even now for future constructions of this kind, I think the companies and some kind of SOPs and rules and regulations will have to be formulated that they must cater for that accident of this kind can take place. And therefore, while giving license to those companies when they are working, it should be taken into account that do you have a capability of this kind? Similarly, when you are tunneling a particular area, then can the kind of, with this episode as a lesson, what kind of problems can come up, and do we have the solutions for those problems? Now, this will have to be catered for in the planning stage itself. And the project report should not be cleared unless they address these issues right in the beginning. That these are the areas, because we know that those rocks and the hills there, they are relatively more fragile than many other areas and many other hills. The geology is such that they do give in at times. So therefore, this aspect also has to be taken into account. Also, I think as far as our National Disaster Management Authority is concerned, we have organized for various disasters. Now, this was a disaster in which we have 16 battalions. We have the agency, National Disaster Management Authority, led by the Prime Minister. There are 4 members, and there are a whole lot of organization. But apparently, I don't think that we have catered for a tunnel accident in the disaster management scheme. Now, this is a new addition. Now that this episode has happened, it is better to now learn from it and perhaps tweak our organization also to cater for this issue as well. We all know that the kind of infrastructure development which we are doing in the country is of a totally different magnitude than what we used to have long back. And the kind of constructions which are happening are also at a different level and a different pace and scale. So now that this is happening, we need to be more careful, because more work you do, obviously there are chances of more accidents too. And therefore, there is a need for catering for that in the planning itself, and making appropriate rules and regulations also accordingly, and technologically empowering those construction companies and making sure that they have those kind of technological equipment which this particular episode will perhaps give us as lessons learned. Vineet.
Right. Excellent points there, sir. And I completely concur with you, and obviously concur with what was shared by Mr. Chatra as well. Let me also rope in Sangeeta Behel, mountaineer, into this conversation. Sangeeta, if you're there with us.
Yes, hi, I'm here. Thank you.
Sangeeta, your opinion on the challenges that present not only mountaineers but people who are in fact trying to get into these mountains to save a life. What are some of the precarious things that one has to contend with while just being a mountaineer at this point in time? And here we are doing something extremely difficult and dangerous.
Well, first and foremost, I'd like to congratulate the mental tenacity of these guys who've been, holed in for so many days. And now I think 41 of them are getting out or have gotten out. So a kudos to them and all the team that has helped them process the entire scenario of the food and communication. So that said, at least it's the good thing that they're out and nobody lost any life. The second thing that I want to talk about is the climate change which is taking place all over. And since we trek up in the mountains and we see the climate has impacted the mountains in such a big way, the weather conditions have changed drastically, simply because of the whole scenario of the season and climbing. So one has to take care of that element. Now, with the tectonic plates, moving to and fro, the mountains are moving too. And likewise, of this incident which has happened, and I would say we have to take care of nature. By far, nature is supposed to be as it is, not to be touched too much, and not too much of commercial angle has to put in everything. Why doesn't the people decide to do this more on foot, get fit and do this more on foot? And there should be a tab on commercialization of the various pilgrimages. We used to have this, and I'm from Jammu and Kashmir, we used to have this in Vaishno Devi, where a certain number of people were allowed at a certain time. Now the hordes and hordes of people that throng these places, which is why this tunnel has been created, so there is a leeway of the vehicles going to and fro. But what I would say is, for these people who are working in fields like the construction and the tunnels and the bridges, where climate change is making so much of a foray, is number one, the safety standards. We do not climb a mountain unless we are secure in our safety. And the contingency planning that goes with it, along with it. Suppose something happens, what do we do next? So these guys have to have a leadership who actually explain to them that suppose such and such thing happens, this is what you would do. Just like the doctors would administer CPR immediately, they should know how to actually give artificial resuscitation in case something happens. So safety at all points. I know it's a skill building exercise, but I'm sure this can be instituted with every human life that is laying their entire life on hold. When they are working on such dangerous and precarious positions, in whether it's on top of a river or whether it's inside the tunnel. And also, I think which would really help is when the hordes of these people who are put together to complete a project, they should have a briefing on how to sort of help and be self-sufficient in a lot of ways. Maybe they can carry some small packets with them, just like we carry in the mountains, to survive for a few days, and they should have it. I know that most of them are not educated to a point, but little bit of these things will help a lot, because without them, we are nothing. India is nothing without these construction workers or anybody who is a carpenter or who's an electrician. Without them, we cannot go ahead. So India needs to step up in these, and safety has to be predominant for every human life.
Safety has to be predominant for every human life. And that's the spirit, isn't it? And that's the spirit with which we have to move on. Group Captain Jha is also still with us. Group Captain Jha, so thank you for braving it out. You've always supported us with your perspective and your in fact guidance when it comes to these national agendas. And such a issue, such a problem coming in is wonderful in certain ways. Don't get me wrong, when I say wonderful in a certain ways, we've all been looking at this despite our differences, despite our egos as Indians.
Vineet, just now when Sangeeta was talking, I thought she would be as eccentric as I am, because we, the adventure sports person, we are the most unsafe people taking up, acts which are absolutely unsafe that we know of. I know when our balloon extinguished at 28,000 feet, I had taken out my mask and was pushing oxygen into the burner, knowing that there are 4 oxygen cylinders and 4 LPG cylinders which will blow us apart. But then I did that. And it is not me alone. Most of the adventure sports person, sorry Sangeeta, bear with me. Most of the adventure sports person, they cut corners. But point that she made is very pertinent, that we must not cut corners into these aspects where we know it is happening. Tunnel work is nothing new here in India. It has been going on. And that's what I said. We have the expertise of almost about close to 100 tunnels now here in Himalayan mountains. So we should have known what are the possibilities. I told you, when, being by virtue of a scientist, I can tell you that before taking up a design, we have the, brainstorming session. We talk of all possible challenges, accidents, incidents, adversities, everything that can happen. And that is what FMECA I was talking to you about, Sanyan, that we do. And when the tunnel work is going on, which is fraught with the challenges that we have, everyone has spoken about, those adversities, those challenges, accidents, incidents, caving in, the other things, and especially on unstable Himalaya, when it is going on, which is seismic prone, which will happen there. So we should have taken that care. Of course, that is for the time when we do the analysis, when the court of inquiry sits down there, looks into all aspects, they will decide about it. But the fact is that this particular group who was given the contract of making the tunnel in Himalaya should have been possessing all those skills, all those expertise. They should have had those equipment which are essential, because this caving in the Himalaya will happen every nook and corner where they're going to have. All roads in Himalaya today, I can watch that the side cutting where it has been done, the side cutting, there is a brick laid on there. Has that brick been placed after the analysis of the load factor? No. I have traveled from Dehradun to Joshimath, especially halting at those corners where this cutting had been there, and at no place I was confident that the side wall, what has been made, has taken the analysis of load bearing. None. And that is the result. Today we are, and it is not only in this government's time. It has been rampantly, it has been violated upon. No one has done that analysis. It should be done pre-cutting the slope. Before we cut the slope, that analysis should be done. Hardly anyone does that. And if anyone does that, hardly anyone adheres to those norms. So these are the problems that is inherent in our country. It has been going on for the decades, and it is happening even now. When Mr. Gadkari had come here, it was, he is the most experienced person to have taken up the challenges of the road building in the Himalayas. He has done phenomenal work, but then these are the lessons should have been learned much earlier. But right now I compliment all the workers who are going to come out. I wish them a very good health. I wish them a very cordial association with their families near and dear, and I wish them all the good health. Wish them all the best. Vineet.
Mr. Chatra, your thoughts and feedback on what you've heard from the fellow panelists. This is a treacherous terrain. We've also heard that this is not going to be the last time something as precarious as this is attempted. But you've already enunciated, you've already articulated that better research and development, better practices need to be constituted. But you can still have the best practices, you can still have the best resources, you can have all the money. Accidents and Mother Nature is something which will recur from time to time.
Thank you, Vineetji. And in briefly, what I think is 2023, we were talking of traumatic travails, lessons. So I concur with the views of all my fellow panelists. In my past life, I used to be and still continue to romance mountains, and I was a rock climber and high altitude climber as well in my past life. So I completely agree with the views that many others have shared, the mountaineer Sangeeta ji and what Captain Jha was speaking, but the earlier speakers as well. I think the point I would like to make in conclusion, in this conclusion, is the question that, what has been done cannot be fully undone. Yes, there are lessons that the mountains are crying and telling us. So those traumatic lessons with a lot of loss of lives, not in this instance, thankfully, and hopefully it all goes very well. But there is a question of turning points. And I think at this point in time, 2023 and years before, tell us on the ground that perhaps development turning points with reference to Himalayas are sorely needed. And these may need balances, but they may need reimaginations of what kind of futures that we envision for our country as far as Himalayas are concerned, as far as people of Himalayas are concerned. So I think that reimagery or reimagination is the question. Do we want the replication of what's the usual development in other parts of the world or in our own country actually replicated in the Himalayas? Or do we need a different planning with nature in respect to nature? See, one of the lessons mountaineers have is never to trample nature, is never, they don't use the idea of conquest of nature. So it is respect to the nature. So I think that is what we must begin in the Himalayas. It will be a message to the world. What kind of planning, what kind of development, and what kind of futures, developmental futures that we imagine for Himalayas. That's one conversation. And how do we make that happen in a graduated manner? I think that is where we need to focus our attention on. Lessons can be lost, lessons can be unheard, but that's the lesson from this, sort of safe rescue that we all need to take home and develop further, tease out further, debate further, plan further. We cannot be isolated from the realities of the ground and do planning on drawing boards in remote planning circles. That's not the lesson we have. Ecological planning, ecological futures, and the need for ecological futures in the Himalayas is the one big lesson I would like to sort of take out from here for future. And I think we need to take out from here for future, but also the important lesson of question of what kind of social secure protected futures we imagine for the working people of India, and how do we make that happen? Because the large majority of the working people of India continue in the informal sectors, are hardly protected in the informal sectors. So all those bodies who sort of work with the workers need to be made accountable. And a large part of the work these days, as far as informal workers are concerned, is in the hands of what is called private corporations, private companies, which, as we have already spoken here, are cut corners of all kinds to make profits and to burden the workers with the risks associated. Thank you.
You're absolutely right. Let me also, in fact, ask General Asthana to weigh in on what Mr. Chatra has just enunciated. So it's obviously, responsible corporate practices, it's responsible administration, it's responsibility for the people who are risking their lives in these difficult terrains, General Asthana, that needs to be taken care of. And this is obviously pointing towards a policy change. General Asthana?
Certainly, it requires a policy change. Yes, it requires a policy change. It also requires, I think, translating the lessons learned into policies in many counts. Now, as I mentioned, let me add a few new points on this issue. Firstly, when we talk of the National Disaster Management Authority, as of now, we have paramilitary forces. The engineer content is quite less. Now that we are doing so much of construction work, it won't be a bad idea if we have one of the engineer battalion being nominated in addition to these 16 units which we have, which can have the content of, shall I say, the mining disasters, because now we will have to recognize it as a disaster. The second issue is there are certain drills which we do, which our engineers do, whenever they are going for any kind of, shall I say, risky mission. They always carry some reserve ration. And as Sangeeta was pointing out, something like meals ready to eat, which we have. So some reserve ration, and also key areas where you are mining. There should be a little stockpile of the reserve ration and reserve water. I mean, some life support reserves, in a manner that whenever you are in a risky area, that is already there. So, and it's already stocked. Now that all gives you a morale booster that, okay, for some time, even if something goes wrong, I am self-contained in everything. So this self-containment is also very necessary. Then we talk of laying down the safety standards for everything, whether it is mining operation or it is construction operation. Also, sometimes what happens is we learn a lesson from when an incident takes place. I remember in the army when we were looking at when something happened in Sumdrong Chu. Till then, we did not realize that the roads till Tawang do not have the turning radius to take our guns up. And we had tremendous amount of problems in pulling our guns up, and the Bofors gun, we found it very difficult to reach there. Now is the time that now that we are doing so much of construction, we need to look all the turning radiuses in that perspective, that the amount of construction which has been done in Badrinath, near Kedarnath, etc. Obviously, the support system also has to take that into account. It also coincides with the point which Group Captain Jha was mentioning, that the load-bearing capability of the culverts and the bridges and all the other constructions, I think they need a review in light of what has happened. Also, when we talk of, I mean, as a macro picture, how much is ideal? I believe after some of the accidents or disasters, a little consciousness has come up as to how much construction should be allowed and how much construction is ideal for a hill station. So perhaps that also needs to be taken into account with greater pace as well as greater sincerity and greater concern. Because more are the number of peoples on top, more will be the supply system, more will be the traffic, and more will be the usage of the roads. And with the wear and tear of roads, if it does not match the maintenance doesn't match the wear and tear, then there is a chance of accident too. So therefore, it's not only construction. Beyond construction, there is a case of maintenance also. Now we in Delhi, I think realize every time the bad rains heavily, and I think it's a live example of what happens. Everybody wakes up that time when you find that your car can't cross the puddle or the water which is there on the road. So I think it's better that we realize it now that an incident has taken place, and thankfully for the good luck of all the 41 of them and good wishes of the entire countrymen who had been watching and supporting and praying for them. No life has been lost, and hopefully everything should fall in place, and they should be back with their families hale and hearty. So I think these are some of the things which we could look into, and a lot more will come by the specialists. We are not, in fact, the last authority on this. We are only giving our observations as laymen. So I'm sure the specialists, when they go into a lot of details, they will also bring out a whole lot of other lessons which we may not have touched upon. Vineet.
General Mathur? Well, sometimes things happen so that we can learn from them. Is it one of those incidents?
Yes, indeed. Yes, in fact, any such incident should actually become a great learning platform. But having said that, I want to tell you something important. There is a need for us to develop a culture and develop a possible network of some universities, some academic establishments who are formally teaching the stakeholders what disasters are and how to handle disasters. I will give you an example slightly away from the thing which is happening today. I'm taking some classes on the nuclear, biological and other disasters, and you will be surprised. Even the stakeholders, the first responders, are absolutely clueless about all these things. I don't think there are any universities in this country who are teaching you CBRN, and because the CBRN threat is a real reality, and that can really cause a great damage to a very large size of population. So the point is, what I'm trying to come at is that there is a need for us to formalize and create a kind of a setup where you can research, you can develop things, you can understand, you can make people aware, you can create these responders who know how to handle a situation like this. And I'm sure if we were prepared for this, maybe it may have taken a little less amount of time. Fortunately, we are very lucky that we're getting all of them alive and all of them are hale and hearty. But the point is, there is a short need for us to study. There is a short need for us to understand the importance of a possibility of a disaster and how to first prevent it, then how to make sure that you can come out of the disaster. So there is a need for a formalized training and a formalized university program on such issues. All types of disaster issues, from CBRN to a mining accident. Yeah.
Right. Mr. Chachra, you've been advocate for, these safety guidelines. You've talked about how workers need to be insulated from these, perilous circumstances. Would you advocate that a robust policy, that has some teeth needs to be implemented?
Thank you. I think the arena of business and human rights, and therefore the question of corporate accountability to human rights, the rights of workers, to standards of safety, of welfare of workers, is an area which needs immense attention and implementation. You have guidelines, you have broad guidelines. You see, there is the international guidelines, there are the national voluntary guidelines. So those guidelines are there. I think that's an arena which needs to be made into a regulation. I'll give you a media report. I was just looking through it. There was an RTI request, and I'm going by media reports, to the Ministry of Labour and Employment, Ministry of Labour and Employment's factory advice services in terms of workers' accidents. Now, the data tells us, the RTI data tells us that 3,331 deaths occurred between 2018 and 2020. But of these, only 14 people were held accountable and imprisoned under the Factories Act of 1948 during that period. I mean, this, of course, is a data you can look back further in history and you will find the same data. So the question of accountability and the question of how do you hold companies and contractors and individuals accountable is a big one. So guidelines is one thing, policies is one thing, and actually investigating implementation of those and holding, sending a message, but also holding those accountable which lead to such dilution of safety standards, such kind of, it's not ignorance, such kind of, sort of not working on it. That's an area of work which countries like ours need. Because otherwise, you are doing everything which is contrary to the interests of people who make our country, to the makers of our country, which are the workers of our country. A lot of them, and majority of them, and an overwhelming majority of them, upwards of 90%, are in the informal sector, poorly regulated, not protected, completely ignored, and working in conditions of extreme precarity. Now, those precarities vary across trades. If you go to the construction industry, there are different kind of precarities workers have. If you go to the tunneling, we were speaking, although the National, sort of Highways Authority of India has now ordered a safety audit of all the 29 active tunnels. So I hope something comes good of it. But I think they have been largely ignored. So it may lead, so it's like Khuda, Allah ke upar rakh diya, bach gaya to bach gaya, mar gaya to mar gaya. So I think that kind of a lackadaisical approach cannot be allowed. Whoever the contractors are, whichever the companies are, these are lessons of the past. If you look at this entire regulation of coal mining sector, I was talking to rack miners in my first intervention. See, that has been regulated now. So with the formation of the sort of public sector under coal, what used to happen in the 60s where minors were at great risk and accidents used to happen by the dozen, unreported, unacknowledged, without any protection, without any even compensation. That got regulated. So I think we need much better work, Viniji, in that direction. And this is not theory. So we have the new labor codes, and we have the 4 new labor codes. And I think in those labor codes, there are certain broad guidelines given. I mean, there are a lot of debates on what can be made stronger. I think we need, in this particular aspect, with reference to protection, safety, the future of our workers, the welfare of the workers, that will determine how good, how futuristic, and what kind of a sort of future civilization that we build that we all can be proud of. And I think that's a big arena of work with reference to what you asked me of what's needed for workers, what's needed for those who make our cities, what's needed for those who make our roads, what's needed for those who make our buildings, what's needed for the unsung heroes, unacknowledged heroes, the women workers of India. With reference to women workers, we haven't talked it, this is not the sort of occasion, but I think this whole arena of what kind of discrimination happens to women workers, the pay gaps that are there, the sexual harassment that happens, that needs complete overall, and we need to protect and build better futures for our women workers, but more generally for informal workers of our country. And I think that's, I don't want to just draw this lesson from this one incident, but that's a broader issue that you asked me. And I think that's one issue that comes out from this instance as well.
Good points there, Mr. Chachra. Sangeeta, coming back to you. Sangeeta, there's a concept about hazardous jobs. And, if you work in an oil rig, if you work in offshore drilling sites, or if you're a mountaineer, if you have to change the light bulb on the top of Burj Khalifa, these are hazardous jobs and people are paid accordingly. Do you think these classifications have to become necessary for, such accidents to not happen in the future?
Number one, each human life in this world is very, very important. And especially for the workers, there are many times, like the gentleman ahead of me spoke, that there are unsung heroes, people who've done things, but they're never acknowledged, or people who have died. Look at the fronts. What I think, and I know for sure, is the policy that has to institute it first. Secondly, an awareness campaign of the same has to be led all across the country, saying that these things are important. Each human life is important. And we always must have a contingency planning. Agar ye nahi ho raha, to iske baad kya immediately karna hai? I used to also work in the airline industry where safety was predominant, and where we had 2 minutes of TUC, time of useful consciousness, meaning to say that's the time that we had that critical time to save. These guys have been so brave. I've been watching the news on and off, and they have braved it. But not everybody is going to be lucky like this all the time. Self-awareness campaign where adults or companies or corporates or institutions can run this as a regular feature, how, which I mentioned earlier as well, first and foremost, how to save another human life. And these guys must have protective gears, which will hold them in good stead should they fall from a pole. Should they be stuck in a tunnel like they were, so they were not cold? I mean, these little things, whole policy has to be brought out and mandated, because it is up to us to run this effortlessly. And if you've got the safety standards behind it, then can you imagine so many things will go on seamlessly, and also it'll be used in time. We don't have to wait for certain things to happen to us to be able to react that way. We'll be able to handle things very proactively. We have such amazing team in so many departments, in industries. We have to put all the heads together, formulate a policy, and then institute it. Skill learning, by far, has to be instituted to the people of the lower rung. There are no two ways about it. They have to be explained in whatever language that, such and such thing happens. This is what you need to do. Step 1, 2, 3. And this is how it's going to, save lives. And also, we would be not sitting and talking about the lessons we have learned. These are the lessons we need to put in force from now on. Now, today is the day to do it.
Group Captain Vian Jha, that's a great point which has been made. These lessons have to be remembered. What happens is that when a tragedy or a calamity such as this takes place, we rejoice at its completion. There is some to and fro, after a few days, but then it's slipped into oblivion. How do we prevent that from happening?
How do you prevent that? Look, Vineet, whatever we have discussed on this panel, most of the safety provisions would be there in the pages of those contracts where it has been signed, when the project was assigned, project was sanctioned. All these things would be in those pages, most of it. I can vouch for it. If you dig those policy documents, you will find such things. But only thing is whether we implement it. That is where we lag. And we Indians are brilliant. Brilliant in the sense that when GST was imposed in the country, within 2 months, our brilliant brains found a way to evade it. So today, any good safety policy or standard operating procedures are there. We are too clever to circumvent doing the things what should be there for the things. Mr. Chacha talked of human rights. It is absolutely essential that every worker's safety should be taken into consideration, and especially those in hazardous work. And these hazards are known. It is part and parcel of that work that they are doing. So all those things would be in the pages. It is only that someone, some agency who is going to regulate this should be little more strict, should be flexible as far as the safety norms concerned. If that supervisor, if that engineer who is looking after this tunnel would have insisted that should such things happen, and he knows it will happen, should such thing happen, what should be our way? Done a small mock drill, NDMA is there. In the armed forces, we do every drill. Everything that we do, first we do a drill of it. So that is how the safety things are looked after. So some sort of measure, if all of them they take, this position where we are right now wouldn't have been arrived. And it will again happen in the future. Himalaya, I tell you, it is the place which is absolutely unstable, and it is going to remain as such. It is in that tectonic 4 and 5 seismic area. It will happen. Only thing is that when you undertake those constructions, it has to happen. We can't remain without those construction, development, tunneling, and all those things. It has to be there. General Asthana was telling you about Tawang. Recently, I have visited Tawang, and that too by road. It is a 20 hours journey from Guwahati to Tawang. And still now, there are few places where a tank we may have to negotiate. So there will be a direct tunneling approach for the broad military hardware like tanks and something to negotiate through. It has to happen for your own country, for our own country. We can't neglect it. But then there's a safety measure. All those norms are there. So do it safely. Do it as per the procedures. Today there is a high-tech, construction work for every area that you can think of. So do it that way and keep the interest of that last worker, the worker who is working by his hand. Keep his interest into your mind. Take the safety norms and do it. And last but not the least, when I had purchased the first scooter of mine in 1978, I think it was there, I bought a helmet, which was that eggshell, knowing fully well I'm a doctor and knowing fully well that if I meet with an accident, that damn eggshell will not save me. But yet I bought that because that was costing me 45 rupees against some other helmet which was costing about 100 rupees. So that is in most of our DNA. So where we think of cost cutting, especially if it is some person who is not that important, who is not a VIP, it does happen. So now we have to change our mindset that we are going to be a developed country by 2047. So let's adopt all those measures where we can claim, not only claim that we are advanced, we should be displaying within ourselves that yes, we are developed. And that is where entire work ethos may have to take a change, take a recourse for the betterment of India. And I wish the country very best of this, because again, it should not happen that we again sit in another panel next year or next year after something similar happens. So I wish the country takes all these things into consideration and goes along. Development has to happen, and development must happen in India. It has been long ignored, especially in those the border area that we are talking of. So wish everyone okay, but today is a happy day. I wish again those workers a very safe, happy reunion with their near and dear, and wish them that nothing goes wrong with them. Wish them all the best, and wish your channel also to have taken up all this discussion for the betterment of the nation. Really.
All right, so the latest is, well, thank you for those thoughts, Group Captain Jha, as always. Well, the latest is that it will still take some time for these 41 workers to be rescued out of this particular tunnel. We've been keeping a close eye, watching minute by minute updates unfold. We'll take a short break on that note. Be right back with more.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.